Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's Q&A. Just a heads up that next week, I think I'm going to have to record the Q&As early on Thursday morning. So if you have any time-sensitive questions or anything like that, try to get them in early. I'm not really sure, though, because I'm going to be traveling for a bit. So hopefully it'll fall into place, and I'll record Thursday morning. It'll come out, Thursday afternoon or something. But fingers crossed everything works out. I'm going to try not to skip one. I've never skipped a Q&A since I came back and started doing this again, but I might have to do it from the road or something silly like last time. But just wanted to give you a heads up. Anyway, let's jump into the questions. First up, over on Subscribestar, the importer wanted to clarify their comments last week about them feeling the Analog Pocket being overpriced, and it was just their situation in that they already have those handhelds and the games for them, so this would just kind of be buying something they already have a second time. I hope my answer didn't come out the wrong way, because that's completely true. That's a valid statement. I think that if you don't have your handhelds modded already with things like backlit screens, or you don't already have ROM carts, because I'm just going to assume that there's going to be a magical jailbreak. I don't know. I'm just assuming. That $200 asking price, which is probably $240 after shipping, that's going to end up being much cheaper than any other option. But in anybody in your scenario who already has, like, let's just say a backlit Game Boy Advance with a EverDrive or something, you might not care about any of that. And that's also my same perspective on the DAC, in that if you already have a Genesis and a Super Nintendo and a Mega SG and a Super NT, the DAC's kind of useless to you in most cases. But if you don't own a Genesis and you really would like to play it on both HDMI and an RGB monitor or S-Video or whatever else, buying the Mega SG and the DAC is actually much cheaper and way easier than trying to figure out any other device. So I think people sometimes misinterpret how rough I am at Analog as me not liking them or anything like that, and it really isn't that at all. It's just simply that their marketing department is absolutely outstanding, and they have the biggest tech blogs just eating right out the palm of their hand, and nobody seems to be asking questions. So I just feel like it falls on me because nobody else is doing it. So that's why I hit pretty hard with things like about the shipping, and whenever there's something that walks the line between a product that could be mainstream and a collector's item, I'm pretty hard on them for that too. They're never at any of the trade shows. They don't feel like part of the community. They feel like that the elite elusive analog, and it's just, no one else is talking about it but me. But I'm a huge fan of Kevin's, obviously. I own all of their products, or at least have owned all of their products at one point. So it's just, I'm a fan. I agree 100% with what you said, though, about to you it might feel overpriced. But I do recognize that to other people it might not. So I'll quit rambling. Hopefully that clarifies both your comments and my responses from last week. Now over on Patreon, Clint Collage had a few questions regarding the tools that he's going to be using for modding. First, he knows that I use the ZD915 desoldering station. What would be the benefit of upgrading to the Hakko FR301? So I looked up that model, and I don't know if there's going to be any difference whatsoever. I could be wrong, but I think that's just the handheld model. But the answer I have to that always is the same as anybody that works on cars. And if you don't, I'm sorry, because this is going to be useless to you. But Craftsman tools are the ones you get from Sears. They have a lifetime warranty. And if you're a weekend warrior, they'll probably last you forever. But of course, if you're a mechanic that's working on cars all day, every day, you're going to want to go to like Snap-on tools or better, even though they're 3, 4, 5 times the price. And that's my opinion on this stuff, in that if you're a weekend warrior that's just soldering your own consoles and kind of doing your own stuff, that ZD915 will probably be all that you'll ever need, and it's significantly cheaper than a lot of the other models. But if you're a professional modder and you have these things running across your desk all day long, I still would kind of go back and forth and see what's the biggest benefit for you. So buying something with a warranty, or buying something cheaper without a warranty that you probably have to rebuy every couple of years, is that going to overall be better for you than buying one really good one with a good warranty and, hoping that lasts twice as long? That one's up to you. And also, you asked if I use a hot air rework station. Yeah, I use the knockoff 858D. And that one isn't really, like, I rarely use it. I probably use it once a month for 30 seconds here and there. I think I mostly use it for heat shrink tubing or just kind of heating up chips that I need to remove, and it does more than a good enough job for what I use it for. But same thing, if you're looking at a lot of mods that are using a lot of hot air stations, then a lot of that require a lot of use of a hot air station, then you might want to look at some of the better ones, but that one's fine for me. The only thing that I do tend to always do with any of these cheap knockoff devices is I leave them unplugged. I only plug them in when I'm using them, and I don't know why. I feel like that's just good, safe practice. I certainly have never had anything start to smoke or catch fire, but, you know, kind of just is what it is, I guess. But hopefully that points you in the right direction. Elmer M had a couple of questions. First, they want to know if the OSSC is getting another hardware variant. So as far as I know, based on any knowledge I have, the OSSC is still going to be the best choice for retro gaming for the foreseeable future, you know, the next 3 to 6 months. I personally do not know of a product that's going to beat that, but I'm just assuming somebody's going to be working on something. So right now is a perfectly safe time to buy the OSSC, whereas the opposite, right? If you didn't own a FrameMeister already, I would say, no, it's end of life and there's other choices, so definitely pick up the OSSC or something. Second question, for good audio capture, is that Asus Zonar SE my preferred sound card of choice, or have I tested other cards and audio interfaces? As far as internal cards, the two best are the Asus Zonar that you mentioned, as well as any of the Asus with like Whisper Quiet something. It's the same motherboard Firebrand X has, but basically there's a few models of motherboards they have where the audio circuit on board is perfect, so you don't need to upgrade. And just to note, their laptops, even the really high-end ones, are not good for audio. You have to use a USB device. As far as external devices go, the one that we decided on for USB was that Lexicon device, only because of cost. There were choices out there that performed the same or better for significantly more money. So if you just go back to that MD Fourier video I did where I showed the whole setup, I don't want to just drop a link to that because you should watch that video to understand why I had to set everything up the way it was. But if you need an internal card, that Asus Zonar is fine. And I've even been using that just today, in fact, to verify some MD Fourier stuff, and it seemed to perform on par with the Lexicon. So definitely check that one out. Just go on YouTube and type in Retro RGB MD Fourier or something. And then the last question, you're most likely going to make a full video on the Carby component cables. No, I actually have no time to. However, I am going to make a post on them. So my early thoughts on it, you get to hear this a day or two before the post goes up. They're a perfectly good replacement for the originals. Perfectionists are going to need the originals because there's a few things about them that I'm going to go out there and say that most people wouldn't notice the difference at all. But for your average person that just wants to play GameCube via component video, they seem to be a perfectly fine thing to use and at a good price. Luckily, the prices of the official cables have come down, but they're still at least double what the Carby component is going for. So that's definitely something that I would feel comfortable using. But if you're going to use the Game Boy interface software, you have to use the custom version that Extrems made for it, which I will add that to the post as well. So, if the GameCube is your all-time favorite console, though, and you absolutely have to have the most perfect component video output, I think at the moment you might still need to get the official component cables. But that's not a scenario that I would notice at all, personally. Whenever I play GameCube games, I use a Wii. The only thing I have used my GameCube for, other than testing in, years now, is the Game Boy interface software. So in my personal opinion, just an opinion, as long as there's a way to use Game Boy interface and it performs the way I expect it to, which it does, then I'm happy. So hopefully I got to all your questions. Paul Pastor had a pretty interesting question. With any consoles that commonly receive RGB bypass mods, what are specific use case scenarios to use the bypass's internal low-pass filter versus not using its low-pass filter in favor of, say, an upscaler or line doubler? So, great question. The short version is, and the only way you would ever want it on is if there isn't any other low pass filter in the chain. A little bit more details on that. When I tested the OSSC's low pass filter versus the one that's most commonly used in the Texas Instrument chips, the OSSC did a better job. So that's definitely a reason. Those the 2 DVI adapters for direct RGB and component video capture that I've been working on, those have the filter built in. And I really think the only time that you would ever want the filter turned on the console is if you're going direct into a digital TV, a flat screen. So none of the original consoles, as far as I know of, ever had a low pass filter because, you didn't need one on CRTs. It would have been pointless. So yeah, I think I kind of laid it all out there. All the major, like the OSSC, the FrameMeister, and all that have filters built in. I'm pretty sure the RetroTink does as well because I'm pretty sure I tested that as well. And the only reason I would even have that on is just, if you're doing any kind of direct to digital thing. But I always leave mine off, just if that puts anything into more perspective. So hopefully, this is really scenario and situation based. So if you have any more questions on that, or if you had a very specific setup in mind, definitely let me know. But the short version, just always leave it off and let everything else handle it. Next, Nicholas Berthamiu. Did I come close? Nicholas was able to score a bunch of awesome RGB monitors. If you have any of them for sale, please let me know. There's still a few that I have on my list that I really want to make sure to collect. And I hate to now use that stupid buzzword preservation, but I do really, everything that I have now isn't getting sold off again unless there's like another tragedy or something. I really plan on keeping all of mine, restoring them all, and then eventually getting them to a museum or something. But it sounds like you're kind of doing the same thing, stockpiling these, rebuilding them, and eventually getting them out to places. The only thing that I suggest is pop open all of them and look in with a flashlight first to make sure that none have leaking capacitors. There was one Ikegami that I saw, one model I saw, or at least one seller that was selling a bunch of one model, and all of them had leaky caps. So those are the ones you're going to want to get to first. And then, of course, just a quick reminder that you can't and really shouldn't calibrate them without doing the cap replacement. What you can do is basic geometry, like horizontal and vertical stuff. And that's something that you could do no matter what, because the worst case scenario, if you stretch it too wide or too tall, you just stretch it back. It's 30 seconds worth of tweaking as opposed to hours and hours if you try to do a deep dive calibration. So it looks also that you have a few that aren't in good condition and that aren't very valuable, and you probably want to start on those, which is great. If you have like a 13-inch that doesn't have RGB inputs, give that one a try. You'll probably be fine as long as you follow the right people and you know what to do, but at least if something goes wrong, you probably won't lose any sleep over it. Of course, always make sure it's discharged properly. I don't want anybody dying working on these because some idiot on YouTube said it's perfectly safe to do so. It's not perfectly safe to do so. So please be careful. Question about the 20L5. When you first turn it on, there's no picture. It takes 5 to 10 seconds for a picture to appear at all, but a good 20 minutes before it's bright enough to play. Is this something a recap would fix? I think so. The takes a few moments for it to get a picture is something that I commonly see on BVMs and stuff. But that whole 5 to 10 minutes or a good 20 minutes before it's bright enough, that could be the tube or it could be the caps. There are other experts out there that would know much better than I would. But 20L5 is a great monitor. So, if you're planning on restoring all of these, I would take the time to restore that one, just because it's one of those that if you do happen to get it working, it's an amazing TriSync monitor, because unlike the TriSync BVMs, although you can't quite calibrate them to be as perfect, they're pretty damn close and they're compatible with all of the sync I throw at it. Whereas a lot of the BVMs that I used, like the D series, a lot of stuff wouldn't sync to it. So, most of that's fixable these days. There's ways around it, but just overall as like a a much easier way of using things. I mean, especially arcade boards and stuff like that. I would actually, in certain scenarios, recommend the 20L5 over a BVM. So definitely take the time to try and fix that. But there could be more. There could be more stuff that needs to be looked at than just the caps in that. So congrats on the awesome score. And I'm not sure where you live, but if you're in the U.S., certainly something. If you're looking to get rid of them, any of them, let me know. I'll make sure they get to a museum at some point and a good home until then. Robert Dickinson asked, will the announced PS1 HDMI kit by Dan and Christoph be compatible with consoles modded for the PSIO? So I think I know the answer to this one, but you'll definitely want to double check with them. But I think as long as it's one of the consoles that's listed as compatible with the kit, you will be able to have both the PSIO and the HDMI in there. But you have to just make sure that I think it's 5000 series and 7000 series. Please don't quote me on that one. Definitely check their website for the details. Or when more details are available, I'll certainly have all that posted. But as long as it's one of those that's already in the compatibility list, then yes, I'm 99.9% sure it would still work with the PSIO. So yeah, that's a good score because that's a pretty complete solution for any PlayStation owners. Well, that's it for this week. Hopefully this came out okay. I felt like it came out good, but I woke up early this morning and started working, and then blinked an eye and it was 5 o'clock, and went, oh crap, the Q&As. So hopefully I found my groove and didn't try to rush through anything or anything like that. Also, I pulled a muscle at the gym the other day, so I'm a little Frankenstein-y. So I don't know. Hopefully it came out all right. But if anybody is new to these Q&As and this is your first one participating in, any questions at all that you have, please just post in the newest Q&A post wherever it is that you support. Subscribestar, YouTube, Patreon, Bitbacker, whatever. Doesn't really matter as long as it's the newest post, and I'll get to all your questions next week. If I missed your question, it probably came in after I started recording the Q&As, or sometimes I just make a mistake and miss them. So if I missed yours, please re-ask it. And once again, next week, I think I'm going to have to shoot it early Thursday morning. So if anybody has any questions that need to be answered right away, either message me directly or just make sure to get them in before then. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next week.